Hey, Be Hope. My name is Robbie Brown. I get to serve as the campus pastor at Be Hope Church in Ironton, Ohio. Welcome back to 21 Days of Prayer and Fasting. Today, we're going to talk about Psalm chapter 10. And in this psalm, it's kind of unique because we don't know exactly where in David's life this psalm falls. There's a couple of different parts that it could. Some speculate that this may be during the era that David is seeing that the giant Goliath standing before and taunting the Israelites. Some believe it may be a reference to the evil King Saul, who was literally chasing David, and he was running for his life for over 7 years. The reality is, we don't know exactly where in David's life this falls, but what we do know is that David was facing a tough time in his life, and there were moments that he was falling into despair. So I want to start with verse 1 out of this psalm, where David asks a question that I think we still ask today. He says, "Why, Lord, do you stand far off? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble?" And then what happens after this? David goes on really this rant almost to God, asking questions like, why do the wicked continue to prosper? Why do we see people that are taking advantage of other people succeeding? And these are questions that people have asked for hundreds of years, and we still ask today. Why do people and evil schemes still continue to have success? And he's asking, God, where are you in the midst of this? And what all of these Psalms teach us is that we can be honest with God. God can handle our big questions. We can cast our cares on him because we know he cares for us. We can ask hard questions. God doesn't get mad when we ask these hard questions. In fact, it's in these moments that I believe our faith has a chance to grow. And so David's asking, where are you, God? Why aren't you interceding? And he goes on for several verses asking some tough questions and just kind of explaining the situations he's seeing unfold in his life and in front of him. And then we kind of get to a shift in verse 12 where David says, "Arise, Lord, lift up your hand, O God. Do not forget the helpless." And so here David begins to ask for God to step in to intercede, because he knows, even though it seems that the wicked are prospering and that sin is reigning supreme, he knows that God is greater than the power of the wickedness in his world. And he begins to ask God to intercede in the midst of the pain, in the midst of the turmoil, in the midst of the wickedness that is unfolding around him. And then he goes on in verse 14 and he says, "But you, God, see the trouble of the afflicted. You consider their grief and take it in hand. The victims commit themselves to you. You are the helper of the fatherless." And so here we get this reminder as David just really puts into words that he knows that God is a God who sees our pain, who sees our struggles, and that he is the helper of the oppressed. He's the helper of the victim. And so he's reminded that, hey, even though these things, this oppression may be taking place around me, even though there may be pain, even though there may be wars, even though there may be famine, even though there may be disease, whatever it is that someone may be facing in the moment, we can rest assured that God cares and sees our pain. And then he goes on and makes this declaration in verse 16. He says, "The Lord is king forever and ever. The nations will perish from his land." And so what this is reminding us is that kingdoms will rise and fall, kings will rise and fall, powers and principalities will rise and fall. But in verse 16, David says this truth: the Lord is king forever and ever. So in the midst of our pain, in the midst of our turmoil, in the midst of the circumstances that can plague us, in times of political division that face us now, in times where there are wars and rumors of wars, whatever we think may be plaguing us, we don't have to be shaken by that, because our God is our King who reigns forever and ever. And because of that, in times of turmoil, in times of uncertainty, we can move forward because God is King forever and ever.
Thank you for joining us here today. Every morning at 6 a.m., you can join us again for another devotional from somebody else. It'll be a great way to start your day. And as you continue to fast, we want to hear from you, so you can put comments in the chats on each area of where you're watching and how you're joining in, so we can stay connected. We look forward to seeing you on the weekends at church. And we also want you to know every Saturday during this season, we are going to meet at 9 a.m. on each campus. And so as you are going through 21 days, check with your campus in each location so that we can come together and pray for all that God has, for what he's going to do as we move forward.